Good morning, everybody. I am Dr. Nitin Joshi, Professor Neurology with teaching experience of 25 years, working as consultant neurosurgeon in Panvel. Today, we will discuss the topic nephrectomy. After suitable anesthesia, mostly what we give for nephrectomy is epidural with general anesthesia for easy and early identification of ureter in retroperitoneum. 6 French open-ended ureteric catheter can be inserted in lithotomy position, and to drain the urinary bladder continuously, and also to help to monitor urine output continuously, 14 French Foley's catheter is inserted under strict aseptic precaution. If procedure is likely to be prolonged, then so as to prevent deep vein thrombosis, crepe bandages are applied in supine position of the patient. Depending upon whether 11th rib bed incision or 12th rib bed incision is selected, identification and SOS marking of 11th rib or 12th rib is done in supine position of patient. For flank incision, typical kidney position is given. That is, patient is turned to full lateral position. Patient lies on his sound side while pathological side facing upwards. Lower leg of patient is flexed at hip and knee while upper leg is kept straight. Pillow is kept between two legs, and to stabilize the patient, broad sticking plaster is applied at level of greater trochanter and shoulder after protecting these bony prominences by Gamgee pads. Other bony prominences as well as axilla are protected by Gamgee pads. Patient is brought close to edge of table, and patient is positioned such that 12th rib of patient lies on kidney bridge. Kidney bridge is elevated to increase the space between costal cartilage and iliac crest and put skin and muscles of anterior abdominal wall on stretch. For better exposure, one can give forward or backward tilt. After giving proper position, parts are prepared, painted and draped. Suction, mops and cautery kept ready. With 20 number blade, incision is taken from tip of 11th rib or 12th rib and extended for 4 to 5 cm posteriorly or backwards. Incision can be extended more if required. The incision is taken from tip extending backwards. This is because pleura comes in relation with posterior periosteum of rib in posterior aspect of incision, and thus trying to protect pleura when you are taking the incision on a posterior aspect of wound. While taking incision with 20 number blade from tip of rib backwards, the blade should grate upon bone and taken along the center of the rib. This is because neurovascular bundle is present along lower border of rib. Then the incision is deepened with cautery to cut all muscles present on rib in one layer so as to expose anterior periosteum of rib. The muscles present on the rib are latissimus dorsi superficially, and deeper to it is serratus posterior inferior, while along upper and lower border of the rib are present muscle fibers of intercostal muscle. The exposed anterior periosteum is cut in the center, and then with periosteal elevator, incised anterior periosteum is reflected upwards up to upper margin of rib, while reflected downwards up to lower margin of rib. The intercostal muscle fibers are separated from upper and lower margin of the rib either by cautery or Doyne's rib separator. At the cartilaginous tip of rib, there may be presence of strong muscular attachments. After holding tip of rib with Alice forceps, rib is separated from its all muscular attachments and then the rib is cut with the rib cutter so as to expose posterior periosteum of the rib. This posterior periosteum of the rib forms second layer of incision on the posterior aspect. When posterior periosteum is separated from rib accurately without perforating, then even underlying pleura gets protected automatically. 11th rib bed or 12th rib bed incision typically shows 3 layers anteriorly as well as posteriorly. The first layer on posterior aspect of incision is formed by latissimus dorsi, serratus posterior inferior and anterior periosteum of the rib. Second layer on posterior aspect of the incision is formed by posterior periosteum of the rib, while the third layer on posterior aspect of incision is formed by diaphragm. While the first layer on anterior aspect of incision is formed by external oblique muscle. Second layer on anterior aspect of incision is formed by internal oblique muscle, while the third layer on anterior aspect of incision is formed by the muscle transversus abdominis. Thoracolumbar or dorsolumbar fascia is present just below the tip of 12th rib. With artery forceps or finger, this dorsolumbar fascia is split so as to create some space in retroperitoneum. Then first and second finger of hand are inserted into this retroperitoneal space, and then with the help of two fingers this space is dilated, and gradually then with these two fingers parietal peritoneum lining undersurface of muscles of anterior abdominal wall are stripped off and mobilized medially. Muscles of anterior abdominal wall are external oblique, internal oblique and transversus abdominis muscle. These muscles are initially stretched, tented upwards by two fingers and then cut layer by layer. While cutting the muscles of anterior abdominal wall, neuromuscular bundle is exposed between internal oblique and transversus abdominis muscle. This neurovascular bundle is consisting of subcostal artery, subcostal vein and subcostal nerve. While cutting the muscles of anterior abdominal wall, every effort should be taken to protect the subcostal nerve. After cutting muscles of anterolateral abdominal wall, access can be improved posteriorly by carefully incising lowermost diaphragmatic fibers as far posterolaterally as possible and then pushing pleura superiorly. Now is the step of dissection in retroperitoneum so as to mobilize Girota's fascia and its contents from posterior abdominal wall. To create adequate retroperitoneal space and mobilize Girota's fascia and its contents from posterior abdominal wall, two wet mops are inserted one after other in upward and downward direction in whatever retroperitoneal space is available. This results into blunt dissection, thus separating Girota's fascia and its contents from muscles of posterior abdominal wall, namely aponeurosis of transversus abdominis, quadratus lumborum and psoas major muscle. Psoas major muscle is the most medial muscle. There is a cleavage plane between Girota's fascia and peritoneum due to presence of extraperitoneal fat. With sponge and holding forceps, this cleavage plane between Girota's fascia and peritoneum is dissected so as to separate the peritoneum away from Girota's fascia. Once Girota's fascia is exposed, Girota's fascia and its contents are palpated. Medially, on psoas major muscle, ureter is identified as whitish tubular, non-branching, non-pulsatile structure with presence of longitudinally running blood vessels in its periureteral adventitial fatty sheath. To isolate the identified ureter, blunt dissection is done on the either side of ureter with the help of tissue holding forceps and mixture. The infant feeding tube is used to hook the isolated ureter, and now the isolated ureter is mobilized in upward direction towards the hilum of kidney. To make the holding bands of the ureter prominent, the ureter is held by infant feeding tube and is tented upwards. The holding bands are then cut with blunt tip scissors till the hilum is reached. Now is the step of mobilization of kidney. Approach to Girota's fascia is either extraperitoneal or intraperitoneal. Kidney is covered by white fibrous capsule. Outside white fibrous capsule is the layer of fat called perinephric fat. The perinephric fat is maximum along the lateral convex border of the kidney and the medial concave border of the kidney, where it fills hilum. And hilum of the kidney is actually identified due to presence of hilar fat. Outside perinephric fat is the fibrous renal fascia called Girota's fascia. Anterior layer of Girota's fascia is called as fascia of Told, which actually faces peritoneum and intraperitoneal organs, while posterior layer of Girota's fascia is called as fascia of Zuckerkandl, and the fascia of Zuckerkandl faces the muscles of posterior abdominal wall. There are presence of thick trabeculæ extending from anterior or posterior layer of Girota's fascia through perinephric fat to the renal capsule. Comparatively more strong trabeculæ are present at the level of lower pole. Opening of Girota's fascia longitudinally is the first step of mobilization of kidney. With artery forceps, anterior or posterior layer of Girota's fascia is opened so as to create so much of gap that 2 fingers of hand can be inserted in this gap. Then, under control of 2 fingers, Girota's fascia is opened in upward and downward direction with cautery. While mobilizing kidney, assistant holds perinephric fat at stretch near capsule, thus making the septas prominent. These septas are cut or split either with cautery or blunt tip scissors. Mobilization of kidney is started first along the lateral convex border of the kidney and along with it a part of anterior or posterior surface of the kidney. The lower pole of the kidney is mobilized first and then the upper pole is mobilized. While mobilizing the upper pole, traction is given on the lower pole so that the holding bands of the upper pole become prominent. During polar dissection, polar vessels may come across which may have to be taken care of. The upper pole of kidney is attached to undersurface of kidney by strong fibrous attachments. These strong fibrous attachments can be made prominent by giving traction to the lower pole once they are identified, isolated, ligated and cut, so as to mobilize the upper pole completely and away from ipsilateral adrenal gland. Ipsilateral adrenal gland is present in Girota's fascia but in separate compartment. Traction is then given on lateral convex border of kidney so as to expose medial border and hilum. Due to complete mobilization of kidney, now kidney is held in position only by the hilar structures, namely renal artery, renal vein, and renal pelvis. During nephrectomy, approach can be extraperitoneal or intraperitoneal. Depending upon approach, whether extraperitoneal or intraperitoneal, relationship of renal artery, renal vein, and renal pelvis with respect to each other keep on changing. When approach is intraperitoneal, in case of simple nephrectomy due to presence of gross adhesions, that time relationship of three hilar structures is vein, artery, ureter. That is, renal vein is most anterior, behind renal vein will be renal artery, and the most posterior structure will be renal pelvis or upper ureter. On the other hand, when approach is extraperitoneal, most anterior structure is renal pelvis, behind renal pelvis is renal artery, while most posterior structure is renal vein. However, relationship of these three structures, that is renal artery, renal vein, and renal pelvis, keeps on changing, and so one has to be careful. Due to proper mobilization of kidney becomes so much mobile that kidney can be brought to the surface of the skin incision. Also, the thumb, index finger and middle finger of the left hand of the operating surgeon can be taken around the pedicle so that these three fingers of the left hand can act as a clamp, so that whenever there is accidental bleeding starts, the pedicle can be controlled with the help of thumb, index finger and the middle finger of the left hand of the operating surgeon. Now the rules while working near renal vessels while performing nephrectomy. First, during nephrectomy, if possible, all vessels should be dealt separately to reduce the risk of ligature slipping. While in case of artery and vein, if they are ligated together, in addition to the risk of slipping of ligature, there is also a risk of formation of AV fistula later date. Ideally, renal artery should be ligated first, then renal vein should be ligated, and last should be the renal pelvis or ureter. This is particularly so in case of radical nephrectomy. This is because once renal artery is ligated, tap to kidney is closed. After ligating renal artery, since renal vein keeps on draining blood from kidney, the kidney and tumor in case of the RCC shrinks, thus decreasing the severity of bleeding if accidental bleeding starts. On the other hand, if renal vein and renal pelvis are ligated first, then there will be more congestion and thus increasing the possibility of more severity of bleeding if accidental bleeding starts intraoperatively. Third rule, the vessels are ligated in continuity before they are being cut. The renal artery and renal vein should be ligated doubly with strong non-absorbable suture material like linen or silk on body side, while with single ligature on specimen side. That is, in case of renal artery, it should be doubly ligated with strong linen or silk on aorta side and one on specimen side. Similarly, in case of renal vein, it should be ligated doubly with strong linen or silk on IVC side and one on specimen side. The part of vessel between the two sutures on body side and one suture on specimen side is held open by opened up right angled artery forceps from below, and then with 11 number blade this part of the vessel is cut. Before ligation of renal vessels, initially they are skeletonized. Renal artery is separated from its investing fibrofatty tissue containing nerve fibers. The direction of dissection of renal artery and renal vein is parallel to long axis of renal artery and renal vein, and it is done with the help of vascular tissue holding forceps and mixture. Before ligating renal artery or vein, at least 2 to 3 centimeter of renal artery or vein should be dissected first before being ligated. This is so as to prevent slipping of ligature. Ideally, renal vessel should be ligated as away from the renal hilum, that is as laterally as possible. This is because in case of renal artery, once it arises as a lateral branch of aorta below origin of superior mesenteric artery, before it reaches hilum, it may branch into segmental branches, namely apical, upper, middle, lower, posterior. If renal artery is ligated near hilum, then there is a possibility that one of these segmental branch may get missed, causing intraoperative bleeding. Next rule, one should not pull the kidney too hard while placing ligature around the vein. This is because pulling kidney too hard may result into tearing off the wall of renal vein of the inferior vena cava, resulting into a hole in inferior vena cava. After mobilization of lower pole of kidney, avoid tilting of lower pole upward, as this may result into tearing of renal veins in the renal hilum, and at this stage, since the renal veins have not been controlled, it will result into severe intraoperative bleeding, which will be difficult to control. Intraoperative bleeding from renal vessels can occur either because of renal vessels may be torn or slipping of ligature or slipping of vascular clamp. If the ligature or vascular clamp is slipped off the main renal vessel, then it may be difficult to find the slipped off vessel in pool of blood. This is because blood immediately fills wound and slipped vessel often retracts. The first step is to pack the wound firmly and apply pressure for 10 minutes. Before the pack is removed, atraumatic vascular clamps like Satansky clamp, DeBakey clamp, good suction, additional sterile mops, vascular suture material like 5-Proline, all are kept ready. Sometimes after removal of the pack, one may not observe active bleeding as the natural process of clotting has stopped it. Even then, it is necessary to find the slipped vessel to control it properly. If bleeding has not stopped completely but reduced significantly, then vascular clamp is applied to the pedicle or the area of active bleeding, after which the open vessel is dissected properly and ligated or oversewn. In case of right renal vein, it does not receive any tributaries like left renal vein. Left renal vein receives tributaries like inferior phrenic, adrenal, gonadal or lumbar veins. But right renal vein is short in length, almost half the length of left renal vein. Also, right renal vein widens as it opens into right side of inferior vena cava. So, there is a risk of slipping of ligature while ligating the right renal vein at its entrance, and so at the entrance cross clamping the right renal vein by Satansky clamps. The vein is cut distal to two vascular clamps, and then protruding inferior vena cava wall is sutured with vascular 5-Proline suture. In 25% of patients, there is presence of accessory renal arteries. These accessory renal arteries arise from lateral wall of aorta and then run parallel to main renal artery. Accessory renal artery are more common at lower pole than upper pole. Whenever there is vascular catastrophe, the rules are availability of adequate cross-match blood, availability of adequate vascular forceps and atraumatic vascular clamps like Satansky and DeBakey, availability of good light, good exposure of injured area to control bleeding proximally as well as distally, availability of good suction, availability of multiple sterile mops, availability of vascular suture material like 5-proline, and call for help from skilled assistant. In case of simple nephrectomy, if kidney is large and hydronephrotic, then carry out needle aspiration of urine. In case of pyonephrosis, try to avoid needle aspiration. However, if needle aspiration is inevitable, then perirenal structures are to be covered properly so as to prevent contamination. If pyonephrosis is associated with pyoureter, then try to avoid lower end of the ureter to prevent post-hoc complication of ureteral empyema. After removal of kidney, foci is inspected for hemostasis, ligatures on the pedicle are inspected, vascular suture on IVC checked, wash is given with asepto to look for any minor bleeding, tube drain is inserted through separate stab incision into retroperitoneum. While closing wound, lowering of the kidney bridge is done so as to have proper approximation of muscles, and then local anesthetic drugs infiltrated in wound for additional mode of pain relief, since nowadays concept of multimodal pain relief modality, and then the wound is closed in layers. Thank you very much.